And we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Red Devils. And a bit of a strange sort of emotions waking up as a Manchester United fan on a Friday. The main thing is a win last night, a 2-1 victory. Rasmus Højlund with the double, and putting United in the current top 8 of that UEFA Europa League, which means that right now we move into the next round. We wouldn't have to go into playoffs, for example. As it stands, we would move into the next round, which is very important. It's the first actually time we've been in the qualification standards for the next round as opposed to those for the playoffs. So on a little bit of a run in the Europa League. The league, however, not quite the same situation. Currently sitting 12 points on after 6 games in the Europa League. We are currently 4 points off the top, which is Lazio. They're basically all but qualified for the next round. Ironically, we've actually overtaken Spurs, who are one of the early form sides of the Europa League. But let's be perfectly honest, not a great performance last night. And I think last night really sort of showed where we are as a club. So despite United winning 2-1 in the Europa League last night, the performance, I think, really showed how big of a job Ruben Amorim has, because this United side is just not a dominant side. You know, they're really struggling to create opportunities. Yes, they were dominating possession last night for at some stage for long, periods of time. But you just look at Rashford, he just seems a shell of his former self. You look at, Dallo, who doesn't seem to be very ineffective. Malacia seems to be very ineffective. And United as a team just seem to be very, very blunt. And thankfully, Rasmus Højlund came on to very good effect, because you look at the bench and, there weren't a lot of players screaming out as, oh, this player can come in and save the day. Anthony came on and didn't really add much either. So whilst the result was a good one, it was a performance that once again showed that this United side is so far off being a top side, and really demonstrated just how big a job Ruben Amorim has to try and get this United side firing. It's going to be tough, to be honest. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. And now we've got Manchester City this weekend. And last night, we picked a side that was very, very clearly a side worried about City on Sunday. There were players that were rested, for example, that didn't play. There were some players who got opportunity. But the main thing, I think, is that he probably wouldn't have even wanted to brought on Rasmus Højlund last night, necessarily, from a minute's point of view. But massive confidence that he'll have gotten. And that second goal, just so well taken. The second goal is why we paid the big money for Rasmus Højlund. Rasmus Højlund, somebody's come under a lot of pressure, given the price tag that United paid for him. But moments like last night show his potential and why we paid the money. The second goal, the touch, the finish, the movement, for example. He is a proper goal scorer in terms of the instincts he had. He loves being inside the box. He wants to score goals there. He can score on his left, score on his right. He's got that natural instinct for goal. And we're seeing it more and more that he's got the ability to find himself in the right places. The problem comes at the moment, his service. I mean, yesterday, Bruno Fernandes rolls the ball into a great free kick, free set move onto his left foot where he wants it, and bang, he scores a really well taken goal. And you watch a goal like that and you think, right, that is a proper striker that we've lacked recently. The problem remains that he's 21 years old and will still struggle with consistency. But we saw a player last night come on, affect the game, change the game. And if the confidence can grow, then I think there's lots and lots of goals to come from Rasmus Højlund. And we're going to need him to score lots of goals, because, we're struggling to get output out of our wingers, to be honest. Wingers who can continue to try and sort of take it on themselves, trying to score goals, but not scoring goals. Rashford started well, but hasn't looked great in the last couple of games. Alejandro Garnacho was, one of our top goal scorers this season. He's not looked great the last couple of games. Amad Diallo is looking really good, but not really looking like, he's going to score lots of goals. I don't think he'll assist a lot. I think he's probably our best, creator at the moment. Bruno Fernandes is starting to get into it, but where are we going to find the goals? This sort of remains our biggest problem. Is where do we find those goals, and who are those goals going to come from? I mean, Amad Diallo, for example, got that assist yesterday. It's basically been on goal, the deflection falling to Rasmus Højlund. But I don't think there are lots of players right now in the confidence levels to be able to do and score the goal that Rasmus Højlund scored last night. To make the movement, have a shoulder there, then move. The ball bobbles up on that first touch, and he hits it first time on the sort of a half volley, really, even on the volley to that bottom right corner. It's just such a well-taken goal. And we need players who can have the confidence and the ability right now to do that. Ability-wise, we've got players who can do that. Marcus Rashford can do that. Alejandro Nacho can do that. Joshua Zirkzee, he's playing well, can do that. But at the moment, they're not doing it enough. And I think that remains the problem with United. We've got players who just aren't in the confidence levels at the moment to be able to. And let's be honest, United is not in a good space at the moment. So it's been a very weird week, with the loss over the weekend, the sacking of Dan Ashworth. I mean, Ruben Amorim must come in and look around, and every single time he wakes up, something else has gone wrong at the club. And he actually spoke about it yesterday. And he said, this is football, and sometimes these things happen. It happens with players and coaches, speaking about Dan Ashworth. He says, I know that it's not the best situation, but the important thing is we continue in our way. The path is really clear for everybody, and I think this can happen in football. He's then asked sort of, is it an unstable environment? He says, I don't think so. He says, like I've said, I felt since day one the support from everybody, so one person leaving doesn't change anything. Maybe not for him, but it's definitely changed a lot for the club because it shows that we're still a club making bad decisions. Whether it's a bad decision to let him go, whether it was a bad decision to bring him in at the first place, a bad decision has been made somewhere along the line. And that's the problem, is that we need to start making these big decisions and bad decisions, which are genuinely very costly. Like, literally very costly in terms of severance packages and paying for players to have to manage and coach. I mean, we paid a release for him, and had to pay to get him out of Newcastle, to then bring him in, and then to sack him 5 months later. It's an absolute shit show of a situation. And we continue to be such a mockery in the world of football because of situations like the Dan Ashworth situation, because of situations like the Eric Ten Hag situation, when you give him a brand new contract to sack him a few months later, and a new manager comes in, and we continue to see that the issues are so much more than just the manager. It's a side that's completely devoid of confidence, and a side that lacks the quality. To lose to Arsenal 2-0, it was a very frustrating result. 2 set pieces, for example, but you could argue there were moments there, where we looked tactically quite good in the first half, we looked capitulated in the second half. But then to go and lose to Forest 3-2, that was a disaster result, because that then put a stamp on everything good that we had been doing. And we're still sitting in 13. I mean, at this stage, we're going to be in the bottom half of the table come Christmas. We are 4 points behind 10th. And we don't exactly... what's the chance of us getting points against City? Look, to be fair, City are there for the taking. They really are. They've won, I think, one game in the last, 10 or something stupid. Last time they won a game was in... I'm not going to lie to you. Last time City won a match was 5-0 on the 23rd of October. And we're taking them on in the 15th of December. So it's almost 2 months since City have got a result. So it'll be about blooming right that they get a result against us. But, the 2-2 versus Palace, for example, it's an absolute capitulation at the moment. And luckily for them, this is a really, really poor Premier League season, and they actually still find themselves in 4th, despite having lost 4 games and drawn 3, which is more than they lost the entire season last season. But it's a game this weekend. We've got to try and go out and get a result. And the reality is, Manchester United are not currently a better team than City, but where City are right now, we actually come in with arguably almost a better form guide. City haven't won in the last 3 Premier League games, I think it is, where we've sort of... we've lost 2 to be fair, but at least we had the 4-0 against Everton. So it's a very interesting situation, because you've got 2 Manchester clubs going into the clash on Sunday with both managers under serious amount of pressure. Ruben Amorim, not so much, he's going to lose his job, but in terms of proving that he was the right choice. Pep Guardiola is not going to lose his job. He's not going to get sacked. But we're talking about a City side who could very well crash out of the Champions League if they continue their form, who right now sit almost 10 points off the lead in the Premier League. And if they were to lose this weekend and Liverpool were to win, they would be 11 points off the lead, with Liverpool having a game in hand. So that could almost be the title challenge gone. So it's amazing how a team that did the treble, in the last 2 years, could potentially not win any of the Premier League or the Champions League this season. So massive pressure on both teams. It's a game that United have to win. After losing the last 2, we've got to find ourselves in that top 10 come Christmas. Otherwise, the top 4 race is all but over halfway through the season, which would be an absolute disaster, because we've got to be in the top 4. We've got to be in the Champions League. Now, the nice thing is because we've sort of gotten our Europa League campaign kind of back on track, that kind of provides a bit of a potential backdoor. And look, in terms of will I rather finish top four or win the Europa League, I'd probably rather win the Europa League. I'd rather, go and win a trophy, get Ruben Amorim's sort of tenure really go. It gets us into the Champions League, for example. It gives us a European trophy that adds to our trophy cabinet, and it means that next year we go into the Champions League and into a season with a bit of confidence that we can win trophies. The Carabao Cup is a huge opportunity because we're taking on a Spurs side, which is also struggling at the moment. Since beating City 4-0, they actually haven't won a game. And so they've also really been struggling recently. And we've got them on Thursday next week in a quarterfinal of the League Cup. And you go and win that quarterfinal, for example, then all of a sudden, that becomes a potential trophy. The only other sort of big club in inverted commas in it is Arsenal. So you've got and Liverpool. So you've got Southampton versus Liverpool. So not to say that only, but when you go and beat Spurs, for example, you're in a final situation. And yes, you might have to go and beat an Arsenal, and you might have to beat Arsenal and Liverpool, or even beat just one of them. But you get to a sort of final four situation, and semi-finals are strange things. Arsenal, for example, haven't won a trophy since the first season with Mikel Arteta. So they're kind of just building this little bit of sort of choker's tag where they just can't find results. They can't get trophies. They can't win things despite being one of the best sides in the league. They can't find those moments and those performances to win them silverware. And, right now, if Mikel Arteta were to get sacked, Erik ten Hag would have had a more successful, from a trophy perspective, tenure than he would have had, which is mental. Ten Hag's been sacked, was only there for 2 seasons, but he won the trophy in each season and said, thank you very much. His Mikel Arteta's been there 3-4 seasons now. He's actually one of the longest serving managers all of a sudden in the Premier League, and he's got one FA Cup, which I don't even think he was there for a full season for. So it's an interesting thing, especially when you sort of, how do you judge the success? How do you judge what is a successful tenure, not a successful tenure, for example, whether the manager's good or bad? And the main thing that you're judged on is trophies at the end of the day. At lower levels, you kind of, for example, taking Bournemouth to European football be massive for them. And when West Ham won the Conference League, that was a massive moment for them. And David Moyes will always be remembered for that moment. When you manage an Arsenal, a United, a Chelsea, you remember based on your trophies. And Ten Hag's got 2, for example. Arteta's got 1. And this is why I said that if United can go and win the Europa League, that's what can sort of settle Ruben Amorim into his role properly. The fact that you get that confidence to say, well, we can win trophies, and it gets the belief into the players, it gets the belief into the manager, it gets into the fans that we are on the right road. Because at the moment, we kind of feel like we're on a road and we'll kind of sort of find results too. But I don't think anyone's sitting here thinking, we can go and win the Europa League after a performance like last night, where we really struggled to beat a Victoria Pleasant, and mistakes, individual errors, once again, proving so costly. I mean, that whole mix-up with Onana, and it's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. And you can't have soft moments like that as consistently as Manchester United do. It's an absolute disaster. It's a bit of a joke, to be perfectly honest, of how often it's happening. And until it stops happening, then we're not going to go anywhere as a club and as a team. So I don't really know what the solution is either, to be perfectly honest. It's not an easy thing. There's no easy solution. But one of the solutions is obviously the transfer market. So obviously United need to start adding players. We've got to try and start building a squad. Now the biggest problem is that there's not a lot of cash available for transfers. So one of the solutions at the moment is potentially selling Marcus Rashford. Now, with the way Rashford's playing at the moment, it wouldn't be a massive loss to United. The problem is we're talking about a player who should be being sold for 70, 80, even 90 million pounds based on what he's done in the past. Now, on absolutely huge wages at 27 years old and not playing particularly well, we kind of lost the opportunity. And reportedly, United are willing to let him go for as little as £40 million. Now, that would be an absolute disaster if Marcus Rashford were to go to £40 million. When you're talking about a player 3, 4, 5 years ago, we probably could have sold for close to 100 with lots of suitors. But unfortunately, his form and stuff like that means we're going to struggle. So, should we sell him? I don't think so, because I don't think the price is right. But he remains one of our more sellable players. You're not going to sell. I mean, some people are saying that we should sell Garnacho, for example. Now that is 100 million player in the making. I'm sure he'll go to Madrid one day. He's 20 years old. He's not going through a good period of time, but he's 20 years old. And look, to be fair, there's a lot of rumors now that he is the league potentially in the change room. A lot of nothing really concrete there, to be perfectly honest. But he continues to be a name that is suggested. But I mean, even not having the best season at the moment, he's currently sitting with 7 goals across all competitions at 20 years old in his second season. So, and I think that's in about 23 odd games. So it's a goal almost every 3 games. So he's still not got dreadful stats considering he's 20 years old in his second season. If this was his first season, people would suddenly go, oh, cool. But it's because of how good he was last season that the expectations have been raised. People are expecting more from him because he's now kind of a bit of an established player, in inverted commas, in the squad. Now, again, our sellable players are a Rashford, for example. I mean, Anthony now, I think we'd be lucky to get 20 million for him, maybe 15. Amad Diallo's playing really well. You don't really want to sell him. Bruno Fernandes is our most marketable player, but you can't afford to lose him. Harry Maguire wouldn't fetch a massive price because he's got big wages that they'd have to try and work with. So we don't have a lot of options of players who we can try and sell to try and raise funds. Jadon Sancho potentially could be one next at the end of the season. They've got Chelsea with sort of the obligation to buy, but not going to be big money there. So I just don't really see how we manage to go into the transfer market right now because we can't really raise funds. And if we do raise funds, it'll be sort of panic sells where we're not going to get market-related rates for. And as usual, it'll be a case of United buying at inflated prices and selling at below market value. And that's the biggest problem is that you can't keep up that kind of tendency and that kind of habit of selling for less than you should and buying for more than you should. It's just the deficits start getting ridiculous. And it's a massive problem. So now we're going to be looking a bit more into this weekend and what we might be able to do potentially against City. So we'll keep tuned for that. We will have our official preview out tomorrow, and then obviously we'll have coverage on Sunday. So please do smash a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel if you are new. Thank you very much.